The galaxy was wide, endless, and full of dangers, yet there were some places every traveler knew to avoid. Earth was one of them. The name alone carried a strange weight. Pilots whispered it in bars. Old captains warned their crews never to plot a course near that star system. Traders told stories of ships that entered Sol and never came back. Nobody could explain it clearly, but the warnings were always the same. Do not go near Earth. At first, most dismissed it as superstition. Tales told by smugglers, stories meant to scare children. But the strange thing was, every species, every race repeated the same warning. From one side of the galaxy to the other, no matter the culture, the language, or the people, they all shared the same fear. Stay away from the blue planet. Stay away from the humans. And yet, the Empire did not believe in fear. The Empire was vast, powerful, and proud. Its warships stretched from one rim of the galaxy to the other. Entire civilizations bowed before its banners. When the whispers of Earth reached their high councils, they did not feel fear. They felt insult. How could a single small planet cause such hesitation in the galaxy? How could anyone expect the Empire to avoid it? In the grand chamber of the Imperial Palace, the voices of the council echoed. Generals, governors, admirals all gathered under golden lights. A messenger from a neighboring race stood trembling in the hall. He bowed low, his voice shaking as he spoke. My lords, I beg you, do not send your fleets to Earth. It is not safe. It is not wise. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne, his jeweled crown glinting in the light. His voice was calm yet sharp. You speak as though this Earth is a threat. Tell me, messenger, what armies does it have? What fleets? What allies? The messenger swallowed hard. None, my lord. No fleets and no allies, but… Then what should we fear? The Emperor interrupted, his voice rising. We are the Empire. We do not bow to ghost stories. We take what we want and the galaxy obeys. The council cheered, their voices thunderous. Only a few sat in silence, their eyes uneasy. But outside the palace, across the stars, fear grew. Merchants changed their routes. Captains refused to sail near Sol. Smugglers swore on their lives they had seen things, shadows that moved where no ship should be, signals that whispered in dead languages, entire fleets that entered the system and never returned. In hidden corners of space, alien elders spoke in hushed tones. Earth is not what it seems. Leave it alone. Leave them alone. Still, the Empire did not listen. Admiral Kale, commander of the Second Imperial Fleet, prepared his armada. Hundreds of ships, shining with power, lined up in formation. Plasma cannons ready, shields glowing bright, engines burning with confidence. He looked over his soldiers and laughed. Earth is nothing, he said. A rock at the edge of nowhere. We will take it in a single day. Then the galaxy will see how foolish these stories are. The soldiers cheered, though some felt a quiet chill inside. They remembered the warnings. They remembered the whispers. But who were they to doubt the Empire? Orders were orders. When the fleet began its journey, the galaxy watched. Some watched with interest, waiting to see the Empire claim another world. Others watched with dread, whispering to themselves, they do not understand. They do not know what waits for them there. The fleet entered the Sol system with pride. Their banners flew high, their weapons charged, their songs filled with glory. They expected resistance, perhaps a small defense fleet, maybe a few missiles from the surface. They expected fear from Earth. Instead, they were greeted with silence. The blue planet turned slowly under its sun. White clouds drifted over its surface. Continents glowed with lights of cities, but no defense ships came to meet them. No warnings, no messages, no challenge, just silence. The admirals laughed. See? Nothing to fear. They are weak. They are unprepared. But the silence was wrong. It was too deep, too empty, like the pause before a storm. On the bridges of the Imperial ships, officers reported strange readings. Sensors failed to scan properly. Communications broke for seconds at a time. Engines flickered with errors that had no cause. Small things, too, small to worry the admirals but enough to unnerve the crew. And then came the signal. It was faint at first, a whisper on the comms, not words, just a low hum, almost like a heartbeat. It echoed across every channel, a sound that reached deep into the chest of every soldier. Some froze, their hands shaking on the controls. Others swore they heard voices in that hum. Voices, speaking in a language they almost understood but could not. The admirals dismissed it as interference. They pressed forward, but the soldiers knew something was wrong. The silence of Earth was not weakness. It was waiting, and somewhere in the darkness of space, something was watching them. The fleet did not see it yet. They did not understand. But the warnings had been true, and soon the Empire would learn why the galaxy pleaded, "Avoid Earth." The hum still echoed faintly in the ears of the soldiers, but the admirals ignored it. Pride was their shield, arrogance their armor. They had crushed 100 worlds before. To them, Earth was nothing more than a forgotten stone in the dark, a world too small to resist the power of the Empire. On the flagship Imperious Rex, Admiral Kyle stood tall in his uniform of black and gold. The stars glittered beyond the viewing deck, but his eyes fixed only on the blue planet below. He raised a hand and the fleet shifted into perfect formation, rows of shining warships, their plasma cannons glowing like suns. "This," Kyle said, his voice booming through the command bridge, "is not a battle. It is a demonstration. Earth will kneel, and the galaxy will finally silence its lies." The officers cheered. The sound was loud, but under it lay unease. They had all heard the stories, even if they never admitted it aloud. Ships that never returned. Signals that twisted into voices. Ghost fleets that vanished into silence. The crew tried to bury their fear beneath their loyalty, but fear does not die so easily. The first orders came. Fighters launched from carriers, black specks against the stars, darting down toward Earth's orbit. They scanned the skies expecting hidden satellites or defenses, but the results came back clear. No weapons, no shields, no ships. "Pathetic," Kyle muttered. "They are defenseless." Another admiral laughed. "The galaxy trembles because of this? A ball of dirt and water? The warnings are nothing but stories for children." Yet the scanners were not completely silent. The technicians noticed strange distortions, energy fluctuations where no sunspot existed, ghost readings that appeared for a moment and then vanished. The officers brought the data to Kale, but he waved it away with a sharp gesture. "Interference," he said. "Do not let superstition cloud your minds. The Empire bows to no myth." His words carried strength, but his heart beat harder than he wished to admit. The fleet descended closer. Earth's oceans sparkled in sunlight, its mountains cut like scars across its continents, and its cities glowed faintly beneath the atmosphere. Kale stared at the lights below, and a thought flickered in his mind. For a species the galaxy mocked as primitive, humans had built much. Too much, perhaps. He crushed the thought quickly. Doubt was poison. As the fleet approached, Kale ordered, "The first transmission to Earth." A deep voice filled with power, broadcasted in every frequency humans could hear. "This is Admiral Kale of the Galactic Empire. Earth, you stand before the might of the stars. You will surrender your world, your people, and your resources. Refuse, and we will reduce you to ash." The message echoed across the planet. In the command deck, silence followed. Officers waited for a reply. Seconds stretched into minutes. Still nothing. "Perhaps they do not understand," one officer said. "Perhaps their technology is too weak to respond." Kale's jaw tightened. "They understand. They are choosing not to answer." His pride burned. He had given countless worlds the chance to surrender. All had answered quickly, some with fear, some with anger, some with desperate bargains. But Earth gave only silence. Not submission, not fear, just silence. "Then they have chosen death," Kyle said coldly. The order was given. The first plasma strike prepared. But before the cannons could fire, alarms blared across the flagship. The fighters that had been sent ahead were gone. Their signals blinked out one by one, leaving only empty static. No explosion, no distress. Call just gone. The officers scrambled. What happened? Who attacked them? Scanners searched, but nothing appeared. The fighters had not been destroyed. They had simply vanished. Cale clenched his fists. His pride refused to let fear show. Find them. They cannot have disappeared into nothing. But deep inside, the officers whispered to themselves. This was how the stories began. First came the silence. Then came the vanishing. Kyle barked new orders. Double the scan range. Deploy another squadron. Prepare the cannons. The fleet adjusted, its power spreading wide, its weapons glowing brighter. Yet the galaxy beyond watched with unease. Dozens of species far from Sol followed the news. In secret. They knew what was coming. They had begged the Empire not to do this. Now they waited for the storm. Cale, standing on his bridge, lifted his chin high. His pride drowned out the whispers of fear. Earth is nothing, he told himself. And soon the galaxy will remember the power of the Empire. But Earth was not nothing. And the silence below was not weakness. It was a warning. And the Empire had ignored it. The Second Imperial Fleet spread across the black sky like a shining wall. Hundreds of ships, each armed with cannons powerful enough to shatter continents, hovered over the blue planet. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful, even fragile. Oceans, glimmering like liquid glass, clouds drifting like pale silk across the surface. To the Empire, it was beautiful, but beauty meant nothing. Power was all that mattered. Admiral Cale stood at the center of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the world below. His voice was calm, almost mocking. Begin the scan again. I want every frequency, every channel. If they have defenses, we will find them. Technicians obeyed. Waves of energy washed across the planet. The results returned, confusing, strange. The scans detected no weapons, no fleets, nothing but cities and satellites too weak to challenge the Empire. And yet, behind the normal signals, something lingered. A shadow in the data. A pattern that did not belong. The lead technician frowned, sweat forming on his brow. Admiral, there is something beneath the surface. The readings don't make sense, Kyle snapped. Speak plainly. It's like the planet itself is watching us. The bridge fell into silence. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Cale dismissed the man with a glare, but the words clung to every mind. The first squadron of fighters returned to formation, circling above the atmosphere. Their reports were strange. Static on the comms, flashes of movement in the void, shadows where no ship should be. Some pilots swore they saw glints of metal like eyes in the dark. Cale ordered another squadron to sweep the area. Again, the fighters vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. One moment present, the next gone. No flames, no wreckage, only empty space. Panic rippled through the fleet. Officers whispered, soldiers shifted nervously, but Cale's pride refused to. Bending it is a trick, he growled. Some cloaking device, nothing more. But then the darkness shifted. At the edge of the system, where the stars burned faint and the void stretched endless, shapes began to move. At first, they looked like shadows, drifting silently. Then the scanners caught them. Metal, engines, hulls as black as the void. Warships, dozens, no, hundreds. They were human. The bridge froze. The crews stared as the shadows of war revealed themselves. These were not bright, golden ships of pride like the Empire's. They were dark, silent hunters. Their hulls bore scars, their designs brutal and sharp. They looked less like machines and more like predators, built not to intimidate with beauty but to kill with precision. The first officer whispered, "Impossible. They should not have. Ships like this." Cale's eyes widened for the first time. "Raise shields. Prepare the fleet. They dare challenge us? Then we will break them." But even as his words rang out, the human ships did not rush forward. They did not scream across the comms or threaten with words. They simply waited, silent and patient, as if letting the Empire make the first move. The Empire fired first. Blazing plasma streaked through the void, crashing toward the human fleet. The blasts struck true, but the ships did not fall. Their hulls shimmered with strange energy and the fire faded into nothing. "Impossible," Cale shouted. "Increase power, fire again." More blasts tore across the dark, but the result was the same. The human warships absorbed them like shadows swallowing light. Then, with terrifying precision, the humans answered. No thunder. No warnings. Just beams of light that cut through Imperial shields as if they were air. Ships exploded in silence. Entire squadrons erased in seconds. One Imperial cruiser tried to retreat, but before it could escape, a single human shot sliced it clean in half. The bridge of the Imperious wreck shook as nearby ships were torn apart. Officers shouted, alarms blared, and for the first time in decades the Empire felt fear. Cale gripped the edge of his command table, his pride crumbling under the storm. These were no primitive rockets. These were war machines designed for destruction, moving with the cold logic of predators. Every strike was perfect, every movement precise. "Who are they?" an officer cried out. "How could humans build this?" No one answered. The truth was clear. Earth had hidden its strength, biding its time, waiting for the day the galaxy's arrogance would bring enemies to its door. And now, the hunters had stepped from the shadows. Cale gave desperate orders. "Form defensive lines, hold the front." But his commands were drowned by chaos. The human ships cut through the Imperial fleet like blades through paper. In minutes, dozens of Imperial warships were gone. The once proud wall of the fleet now looked broken, scattered, burning. Cale's voice dropped low, almost a whisper, though the bridge still heard him. This cannot be. But it was, and the first encounter between the Empire and Earth had begun. The void burned with fire. Imperial ships, once proud and untouchable, scattered like broken glass across the stars. The human fleet advanced, without sound, without hesitation, their dark hulls cutting through the wreckage like predators moving through blood. On the bridge of the Imperious wrecks, Admiral Cale shouted for control, but his voice no longer carried the same strength. The confidence, the laughter, the arrogance that once filled the fleet had vanished. Now there was only fear. "Hold formation," he cried. "We are the Empire. We do not fall to savages." But the truth was already written in fire outside, the windows. Human ships moved like shadows, faster than the eye could follow, striking with a precision that no Imperial commander could match. Every time the Empire adjusted, every time they tried a new formation, the humans were already there, waiting, cutting them apart piece by piece. It was not war, it was punishment. A young officer trembled as she reported, her voice shaking. "Admiral, 20 ships destroyed in less than 5 minutes. Their weapons, they cut through our shields like nothing. We cannot hold them." Kyle's hands shook, but his pride forced him to roar back. "Then we fight harder. Increase power to the cannons. They cannot match our numbers." But numbers meant nothing. The Empire had hundreds of ships, yet it felt as though they faced a predator that had been studying them for years, waiting to strike. Every mistake, every weakness, every blind spot, the humans exploited it with merciless efficiency. One Imperial cruiser turned its guns on a lone human destroyer. Plasma fire rained down, brighter than the sun. When the light faded, the human ship was still there, its hull scarred but unbroken. And in return, with a single flash of light, the destroyer tore the cruiser apart, splitting it into 2 burning halves. Gasps filled the bridge. Soldiers who had once sworn never to fear now trembled openly. They are not fighting to defend," one officer whispered. "They are fighting to destroy." Kyle turned, rage burning in his eyes. "Silence," he snapped. But deep down, he knew the truth. The humans were not defending. They were teaching. For centuries, the galaxy had mocked Earth as weak, primitive, unworthy of fear. But now the lesson was being written in fire across the void. Humanity was no victim. Humanity was no prey. Humanity was the predator the galaxy had chosen to forget. A transmission cut through the chaos. The voice was human, calm, cold, and terrifyingly steady. "You should have listened. No name, no threat. Just those words. And then the channel went dark. Kyle felt the blood drain from his face. He had sent countless ultimatums to broken worlds demanding their surrender. Never once had he been the one to receive a warning. The humans gave no chance to respond. They struck again. Imperial carriers exploded in bright bursts, their crews erased in silence. Frigates tried to flee only to be hunted down with ruthless precision. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's banners burned. Kale staggered as the ship shook under another blast. How do they do this? How could humans build weapons beyond our knowledge? The question hung in the air, but no one answered. Some believed humans had always possessed this power, hiding it from the galaxy until they were ready. Others whispered that the Death World had shaped them, forged them into something stronger than any empire could imagine. Whatever the truth, it no longer mattered. The reality was in front of them. The humans were not weak, and they were not merciful. Kale's pride cracked. He looked at the terrified faces of his crew and finally saw what they already knew. The Empire was losing. The fleet that had once ruled half the galaxy was being broken by a single world it had mocked as primitive. A desperate officer shouted, "Admiral, we must retreat." Kyle's jaw clenched. Retreat was dishonor. Retreat was shame. But as he watched another squadron vanish in flames, his pride felt hollow. The truth was simple. If they stayed, they would all die. He gave the order. Signal the fleet. Fall back, now. The Empire, for the first time in centuries, ran. But the humans did not let them escape easily. As the Imperial ships turned, the hunters pursued. They struck at the edges, tearing apart stragglers, leaving flaming wreckage in their wake. Only a fraction of the fleet managed to break free of the trap. The rest burned in silence, their banners falling into ash. Kale slumped into his command chair, his hands trembling. His voice broke as he whispered to himself, "What have we done?" The answer was clear. They had ignored the warnings. They had mocked the galaxy's fear. And now, the Empire had awakened something it could never control. The fury of humanity had been unleashed, and it would not be forgotten. The once proud Second Imperial Fleet limped through the void, a shadow of its former glory. Where there had been hundreds of warships, only fragments remained. Broken hulls drifted, burning quietly in the endless night. Survivors sat in silence, their eyes hollow, their voices gone. No cheers, no pride. Only the sound of engines dragging them away from Earth's gravity well. On the flagship, Imperious Rex, Admiral Kyle stared at the cracked screens, his reflection pale against the glow of fire outside. He had commanded victories across 1,000 systems, but none of those mattered now. He had witnessed something the galaxy had only whispered of. He had seen the fury of Earth. The transmission came again. Short, simple, from the humans. Do not return. It was not shouted. It was not angry. It was steady, final, like a judge delivering a sentence. Kyle felt his heart twist as the channel went dark. He knew those words were not only for him, but for the entire galaxy. When the survivors reached Imperial territory, chaos erupted. Crowds gathered at starports, staring at the shattered fleet. Where were the banners? Where were the cheers of conquest? Instead, they saw broken ships scarred with burns, crews who refused to speak, soldiers who trembled at shadows. Word spread faster than light. Merchants carried the story. Refugees whispered it in secret corners. Officials tried to silence it, but truth cannot be silenced forever. The tale grew. The Empire had gone to Earth, and Earth had destroyed them. In council chambers across the galaxy, panic took root. Leaders who had once mocked the warnings now trembled. The blue planet was no longer a forgotten rock. It was a storm, silent, but waiting. And everyone now understood why the galaxy had pleaded, "Avoid Earth. Alien." Ambassadors begged for details. Survivors gave fragments, beams of light that cut through shields, ships that vanished into the dark. human warships that moved like predators. But the most frightening detail was not the weapons. It was the silence. Humans had not spoken in anger. They had not shouted for glory. They had not demanded tribute. They had only destroyed, then warned, "Do not return." That silence was worse than threats. It meant confidence. It meant control. It meant humanity was strong enough that words were not needed. On distant worlds, alien children asked their elders, "Are the humans real?" And for the first time, the elders answered, "Yes." The story changed. For centuries, Earth had been called a myth, a ghost world, a curse. But now the myth had bled into reality. Now the galaxy whispered new words. "Pray Earth never comes for you." The Empire tried to rebuild its pride. Propaganda filled the stars claiming victory, calling the battle a test. But no one believed it. The survivors' eyes told the truth. The silence of the veterans, the fear that lingered in their voices, it was stronger than any rumor. Kyle himself stood before the Emperor, his uniform torn, his pride shattered. The golden throne room seemed smaller now, weaker. The Emperor demanded answers. How could you fail against primitives? How could you shame the Empire? Kyle lifted his head slowly, his voice hollow. They are not primitives. They are predators. Earth is not weak. Earth is waiting. The Emperor roared in anger, calling him a coward, a liar. But the council did not cheer as before. They listened in silence, unease crawling across their faces. Doubt had entered the heart of the Empire, and it would never leave again. Outside the palace, the whispers grew louder. Across trade routes, in the halls of alien kings, in the dark corners of outlaw dens, the story spread. Earth was no longer a fairy tale. Humanity was real. Humanity was strong. Humanity had beaten the Empire. And soon, the question began to rise. If humans could destroy the Empire's fleet so easily, what else could they do? Would they expand? Would they strike again? Would they remain silent predators, waiting for others to step into their trap? Nobody knew. And that uncertainty was more terrifying than any war. For now, Earth remained quiet, its skies still blue, its cities still glowing under the sun. But everyone who heard the story felt the same chill. Silence did not mean weakness. Silence meant preparation. Admiral Kale, stripped of command, sat alone in the ruins of his pride. He whispered the words that now echoed across every star, words that the galaxy would never forget. We should have listened.